extension talks have begun between Jonathan Taylor and the Indianapolis Colts. So, when can we expect a deal to be done? When might it happen? And we have to talk about Colts minicamp that wrapped up this week as well. All of that is on the docket for tonight. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore. I'm joined here by my co-host and fellow writer at Horseshoe Huddle, Drake Wally. Drake, the Colts have broke for minicamp officially. So the next time the Colts will be on the field together as a team in July for training camp, a little over a month from now. So we're definitely in that lull period of the NFL season, but we still have plenty to talk about from Colts camp. So how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing really well. I'm pretty excited to see. Well, I mean, like you said, the next couple of weeks, next month or so, it's going to be pretty quiet in the Colts realm of things, or at least that's what you hope, because usually, you don't want like unforeseen things kind of popping up. But I'm pretty excited to, talk about what happened and kind of talk about what Jonathan Taylor was saying and kind of dive into the context of his words.
Yeah, and I think when you hear, because obviously the media spoke to Jonathan Taylor on Wednesday, the day that they broke camp, and he's definitely sending a message to the team. You can tell with what he was saying, he was being very calculated. So it's going to be a fun show tonight. Stats Matt, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for finally joining us after skipping Monday night's episode.
Wow.
It's just pretty unacceptable by you, but I guess we'll get through it. Inside the Shoe is here. Good to see you as well. It's going to be a fun episode tonight. So everybody, if you haven't done so already, like I say every episode, please follow us on all the things. Go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow at Colts on FN on Twitter. Subscribe to that YouTube channel and hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I are going live, because even though the Colts are off for the summer, Drake and I certainly aren't. And we're going to be bringing you content every Monday and Thursday night here on the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. It's going to be a fun summer as we lead up to a crucial training camp for the 2023 Indianapolis Colts. And if you can't catch us live, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. You can get us right there wherever you are. So Drake, the first thing we're going to talk about in this episode is Jonathan Taylor. So Jonathan Taylor, speaking to the media yesterday at West 56th Street, revealed that his side of things, his agent and the Indianapolis Colts, Chris Ballard, the front office, have begun to discuss a contract extension for the all-pro running back. And there was he spoke for, I think he only spoke for about 5 or 6 minutes, but the majority of those conversations were about his contract extension. And not only that, but also just kind of the situation with running backs around the NFL, how you're seeing where teams aren't really willing to pay top dollar for running backs, and their value is just continuing to decrease. I mean, we see the New York Giants and their situation with Saquon Barkley. Dalvin Cook was just released by the Minnesota Vikings, and now we find Jonathan Taylor, who's going to be entering a contract season in 2023 as he deals with the Colts, and they try to come to an agreement to keep him in Indianapolis long term. So Drake, first off, it's what I want to ask you here is kind of what was the big thing what was one of the big things that stood out to you as far as what Jonathan Taylor had to say yesterday, just about this whole, what he's looking for in a contract, or what he wants to get out of this deal with the Colts?
Well, I mean, one of the things that was pretty interesting was how he addressed his position as a whole in the league. He said, want to be treated fairly, and it was regarding the running back's value. As you said, it's happening kind of league wide. I mean, one of the two of the biggest names outside of Taylor right now, one of which is looking for a contract, and you might be looking at a holdout potentially in Saquon Barkley, and the other one, it kind of was unprecedented when it happened and very surprising. But the Vikings just cut Dalvin Cook and said, look, this guy's a little too injury prone and the money's not worth it. So they cut ties with him. the running back position is starting to become nowhere near as valued. You can tell in the NFL, and it's more of a committee thing where it's like, hey, we don't need to pay you now, and we can just find somebody else. We could get 2 or 3 guys that we could work into a group that effectively works as one superstar potentially. So that's kind of the thinking, and I can understand where Taylor says, look, it's a little different for him. You know, I mean, he's kind of shouldered the entire load for the offense over the last 2 seasons, respectively. But something else he said is, they've approached everything in these discussions with the Colts, him and his new agency, and he said, hopefully, they can see the value. So kind of like you said, he's kind of subliminally saying, look, I'm not just an average running back. All right, I'm up there with the Derrick Henrys of the world, where I'm shouldering an entire offensive load from the backfield. And he's got a claim to a contract extension because of what he can do with Anthony Richardson, which, as I've said, is one of the biggest reasons that it's so intriguing that Anthony Richardson is a Colt, is to see him with Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. So I thought that he said a lot of cool things, but the coolest one is, I want to retire a Colt. He said he wants to retire a Colt, and hopefully the organization sees it the same way, because I do. Like, that's a quote. So I just love that, because that's him saying, look, I really want to do what we have to do to get a deal done. He's trying to get his deal, obviously, that he wants, but you can tell there's probably some willingness to bargain a little bit in his voice. I mean, he really wants to play for the organization.
He does, and I think the biggest thing that I came away from his comments yesterday is that he wants to feel like he's valued. He doesn't want to feel like he is just another player. And for the Indianapolis Colts, I don't think you can characterize Jonathan Taylor as just another player. I mean, for the better half of, or for the better amount of time, the last 2 years or so, the Colts offense has really been centered around Jonathan Taylor and what he can do. Now, I mean, yes, he did have a down year last year, but it seems like when he played 11 games, had a bum ankle all year, and everybody forgets what he did in 2021, where he was the best running back in the league by far. Now, I think Jonathan Taylor still has that in him. He's definitely in his prime. Obviously, running backs, the shelf life of a running back is typically a lot less than many other positions. But at the same time, when you have a player like Jonathan Taylor in his prime, as one of the best players at his position, I mean, we've already seen what the Colts have done with players like this. Doesn't matter that whether you consider running back as a premium position or not. I don't think that really matters, because we've seen with Quentin Nelson, with Shaquille Leonard, with Braden Smith, these guys are players that are at the top level of talent at their position, and the Colts don't want to let those guys out the door. So they're going to pay them top dollar for their position. So, and Jonathan Taylor's the same way. Chris Ballard loves Jonathan Taylor. This organization loves Jonathan Taylor, not only for what he can do on the field, but his impact in the community as well. And Taylor mentioned that numerous times yesterday about his impact in the community and wanting to really help the community of Indianapolis in any way that he can, and that the Colts organization, he thinks really appreciates that, and I certainly think they do. But it's still a contract negotiation, and a lot of people are wondering, do you pay a running back a huge chunk of change, a huge percentage of your cap? Because lately, I think it's very interesting to look at the list of Super Bowl champions, and I think since the New Orleans Saints beat the Colts back in Super Bowl 44, it's something crazy like that. That the highest paid running back on each one of those teams, I think the highest paid one was like, it made over $1 million that season. So you just don't see teams that pay running backs go make it or win Super Bowls. It's just how it's been over the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, and you take a look at, I mean, the Broncos, they had guys like Monty Ball, and they had guys like, I think it
No
was
Sean Moreno.
Yeah, no Sean Moreno, that was heading into their Super Bowl loss. They had Anderson, I think, was one of the running backs.
Mhm.
He was quickly faded. And then you have a team like the Rams who had a superstar in Todd Gurley. But what did they have to do? They had to go back to CJ Anderson, who was the guy that I just mentioned, as a backup in the Super Bowl because he couldn't play. He was injured. So it's interesting because then you've got the Patriots who won with a guy like Garrett Blunt, who on any given time could start for you, but he was also kind of a depth piece too. So it's interesting to think about that because even Isaiah Pacheco, I believe was a 7th round pick, and he dominated the running back snaps. And in a dynamic offense like Andy Reid's Chiefs, he played more like a 1st round pick.
Mhm.
So it right there is one of the biggest. That's a big thing because if you're an offensive mind, perhaps you can turn a guy who isn't your A++ type running back that might be drafted as a C- type guy, and you could elevate that play just because of scheme, planning, and offensive talent around him. So, yeah, it's interesting to see the champions really haven't had a super duper dynamic running back to lean on that have won the Super Bowl.
Right. And here's the thing. I do bring up that point, but I'm going to try to play devil's advocate on myself here a little bit.
That's right.
I think the Colts are in a very precarious situation, and their situation isn't like those other teams those teams that had made it to the Super Bowl. And the reason for that is because I think having Jonathan Taylor on your team, number one, I mean, obviously it boosts your running game. That's pretty obvious. But having Jonathan Taylor on this Colts team is really going to be crucial and essential for the development of number 5 of Anthony Richardson. And what is this entire season really about? And the next 2 to 3 years really about? It's not necessarily winning a Super Bowl or going and making a huge playoff run. If you get those, great, that's extra. But right now, it's all about the development of Anthony Richardson and making sure that he is on track to be this team's franchise quarterback for years to come. The best way to do that is to surround him with a supporting cast. Not only great coaches like Shane Steichen, getting Jim Bob Cooter and Cam Turner in here, but teammates, playmakers, guys that he can rely on the field so he doesn't have to be Superman every single play. And what is the best friend to a rookie quarterback? A strong running game. And Jonathan Taylor on the field is an absolute game changer. When you put that together with what Anthony Richardson can bring, and we've talked about it already, just the ability to freeze a defense with a read option because you think, well, Anthony Richardson might still have the ball. We all have to account for him. That's a half second that those linebackers are flat-footed, and it's another half second that Jonathan Taylor with his 4.3 speed can take advantage of, and it might just be the difference between a 5-yard gain and a 25-yard gain. And just having that option there, pairing those two together, I think is going to be huge for the success of this team, and really something that the Colts can lean on this season into over the next few years while Jonathan Taylor is still in his prime, and the Colts really should take advantage of that. But I think what everyone wants to know, Drake, is what's the likelihood? And I want to ask you this too. What do you think the likelihood is that a deal between the Colts and Jonathan Taylor gets done before the 2023 season?
I think it's pretty likely actually because like the Colts are going to look at this New York Giants situation and they're going to say, do we really want this fiasco happening? Because again, Saquon's not focusing on football. And because Saquon's not focusing on football, the Giants also can't focus on football. The front office can't. Teammates can't. They're worried, is this a Le'Veon Bell situation in 2018 again, where the guy sits out the entire year? Because based off of his attitude, which is not a selfish jerk attitude, it's more of I want my value. I've carried this entire team's offense. Last season, he caught more passes than anyone else out of the backfield. So that's Daniel Jones's best friend. I can definitely understand his claim. So I think the Colts are going to look at that and say, man, we want Taylor focused on football. This isn't year 4 of Anthony Richardson. This is year 1. It's also year 1 of Shane Steichen. It's also year 1 of Cam Turner and Jim Bob Cooter. I mean, this is a team that needs Jonathan Taylor. I'd say it is an incredibly high chance of it getting done And I also think that it's going to limit distractions so that the rest of the team, who's so young, can focus on football and not worried if their top dog is going to get a contract or if he's going to sit out an entire year.
Right. I think you're definitely on the right track there. I would assume that this does get done before the 2023 season. While Jonathan Taylor in his comments did seem like he was very calculated in what he said. I mean, he obviously wants to get a deal done. You talked about it, that he said that from the first season he wants to retire a Colt. He wants to be in Indianapolis. The Colts, for all the people that say that you shouldn't pay a running back, I mean, it doesn't matter. The Colts, I have this on good authority, the Colts want to keep Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis. They don't want to let 28 to go test free agency or risk losing him to another team. So I would say that it is a high probability that this gets done before the 2023 season. No, I'm not saying it's going to get done before training camp. It very well could, but this could linger into training camp. And I know both sides want to get this done before the season starts, like you said, to limit distractions. And we've seen this with, like I mentioned, Quentin Nelson, Shaq Leonard, and Braden Smith. All three of those guys got their deals done in the summer or into training camp before the first game of the season of that respective year that they were up for the contract extension. So I think Jonathan Taylor, it's going to end up being the same way. And then the final question would be, what is that contract going to look like? So Drake, real quick before we move on, what do you think this, as far as numbers wise, what do you think the contract could look like for Jonathan Taylor?
Well, I mean, you got the long term, I think, would be a 5-year, and I think Dalvin Cook is actually still on a 5-year, $63 million contract or something like that.
I think that's what his contract was with the Vikings before they released him.
That's very fair. I think that it's more, if it gets done, it's more like a 4-year contract. And I think McCaffrey has the highest paid average. It's like 16 million. I'm going to go, because he might have a claim for the highest paid at the position, but I just think that, I don't think that that's going to happen. I think it's more like about a 15 million, $16 million a year deal. I think maybe he'll either like come close to it, or he'll tie McCaffrey for that spot.
Yeah, McCaffrey right now leads the NFL as far as for the running back position for average per year salary at around 16 million per year. As Patrick Wire, thanks for the super chat, buddy, says he's here. The show can start. Show's been started, buddy, but hey, thanks for joining us. See, Logan Schmidt is here as well, fashionably late, but as Stats Matt says, better late than never. I honestly don't know if he's gonna reset the market for running backs. He certainly could. That would surprise me. I think if that's the case, then the Colts will be overpaying for him. So I don't know if he's gonna get to 16 million, as my beautiful wife Danielle gives another super sticker.
Hey.
Thank you for your support. Hope you're enjoying the lake up there. Tell your grandparents I said hello as well. But if I had to say, I think Stats Matt kind of hits where I'm thinking it'll be. 4 years, 54 million. The first 3 years guaranteed at 27 to 30 million dollars. I think that's a really good area. That'd be around 13.5 million per year, something to that effect, closing in on 14. And that would make Jonathan Taylor around the third highest paid running back in the NFL on a per year basis, behind McCaffrey and then Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. I think Saquon Barkley's contract is around 14 or 15 million a year. At least that's what the offer from the New York Giants is. So maybe Jonathan Taylor says, I want to have at least that. And then maybe that bumps it up to maybe 14 and a half, something like that. But either way, I think that the deal gets done. And we have to remember, the Colts have a quarterback on a rookie deal. That gives them so much more flexibility over these next 4 or 5 seasons to be able to overpay a little bit for their stars because they're not paying $45 million a year to a quarterback. Okay. So that certainly helps. This new TV deal that's coming in for the NFL is going to cause the salary cap to spike over the next few seasons. That will certainly help the Indianapolis Colts, and the way they can structure that contract and really front load that deal. So that way, when they have the cap space now, that's when you're giving Jonathan Taylor all of that money, and have it get lesser as the years go on. We have another super chat here from the GOAT himself, Logan Schmidt. Said, I'm guessing he gets 13 to 15 million per year. Yeah, right along those lines, Logan. Drake and I are right on board with you. Appreciate your support, brother. You're definitely a real one, as always. So yeah, that's definitely going to be a story to watch all summer long. Is will the Colts and Jonathan, or what? And I shouldn't say will. It's more of when Jonathan Taylor and the Indianapolis Colts will get a deal done. But I think we can firmly say it'll likely be before the 2023 season kicks off.
Yeah, and you want to be able to, you just want to be able to have the mind focused on football. And again, it's the number one player on the offense. It's still who the offense is going to run through. So I definitely think it's going to get done and just get everybody focused on one thing, and that's winning.
Yeah, and I really think that the Colts want to just focus on winning, and how to do that. Allen Iverson may disagree with me, but we're talking about practice as the Colts wrapped up mini camp this week. Only 2 days of mini camp out of the scheduled 3 days, and that's because yesterday Shane Steichen gave a little competition. Told the offensive defensive linemen they had 6 tries to catch 2 of the 6 punts, and if the linemen caught 2 of those, camp would be done. They wouldn't have to practice today. It only took the Colts 2 tries. They caught the punts on the first 2 tries, and so that allowed them an extra day of their summer and to break camp early. But Drake, there was a lot that was coming out of West 56th Street throughout these couple days, and really throughout OTAs that we can really talk about. And I wanted to start with this because it doesn't fail that even though it's a practice the beginning of June, new system, new quarterbacks, plenty of players that are actually going to be contributing and out there on Sunday were being held out for minor injuries or for whatever the reason. But the offense did tend to struggle a little bit. And before we do that, Logan Schmidt, he's gonna plug. He said also his spaces is this Friday, and Andrew needs to join. Logan, guess what, buddy? I was actually going to reach out to you and Drake. I'll be there tomorrow night, so it'll be a fun time. We'll be able to join that show. Again, thanks for the super chat, and we'll have some fun talking some Colts football tomorrow night. But the offense did tend to struggle, Drake, in minicamp this week, and is it a cause for concern, or is it just par for the course at this time of year?
It's not concerning at all, actually.
We go.
It's 100% expected. And in fact, this channel, and Locked On, I mean, alike, they've preached this. I think Saddle Up did too. I mean, like, we've all preached it. Look, this is a young team with a brand new system, and you're going up against a defense that still has some serious studs. Even without Shaquille Leonard out there, that is a seriously talented defense still. And they're going into their second year in a scheme that they understand far more than the offense, who's very young, understands Shane Steichen's offensive play calling. So that's expected. So it's kind of like you should just be patient with this development, because you're also dealing, I think it was, I believe it was Braden Smith that was actually out with for a couple of those practices, and even Blake Freeland, ended up getting some playing time. So it's just such a young team. Mistakes are going to happen. You have a young and raw quarterback. Those things are just going to happen. It's just going to happen in this situation in Indianapolis.
Right. And even when you don't have a rookie quarterback or a new quarterback, in the case of Gardner Minshew, typically the defense is ahead of the offense at this point in time anyway. So it's not it's not crazy to think that the defense could be dominating at this point, regardless if there was a rookie in there or not. These things just happen. So no cause for concern. And this is kind of what I mean is we really need to have patience with Anthony Richardson, with this Colts offense, and make sure we're giving it the appropriate time. Yes, Anthony Richardson was the number 4 overall pick. He's probably not going to light the world on fire right out of the gate. He's going to need a year, maybe even 2 to really get there. And that doesn't mean he's not going to start before that second year, but you just got to give him time. You got to let him develop. You got to let him take his lumps. You got to let him learn. And it certainly doesn't help that Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, Jelani Woods, Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss, many of the people that are the weapons that this Colts offense is going to deploy on Sundays during the regular season, we're not out there. So let's dive into Anthony Richardson, Drake. We kind of saw the numbers and heard some things out of camp. So just kind of give me a summary of how Richardson fared in his first mandatory minicamp with the Colts.
And I'm going to throw some stats out there that I'm pretty confident in, but correct me if I'm wrong. But he fared poorly, but it's expected. Okay. I think he was around 5 for 13 with his throws, but something else needs to be put into perspective is that Gardner Minshew also struggled. He was not, on par with the offense either. But the thing is, Richardson is still showing positive signs of development. And that's really what this is all about. You cannot expect in the middle of June with a guy that had 13 NCAA games in his career to, light the world on fire in his first practice against a defense that knows him better than he's going to know them.
Right. And the thing is too, I mean, yeah, I think he went like 5 or 13 when you combine 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 periods, but that's also not taking into account that there were, I think, just talking with Jake Arthur, who was there at practice those days, there were multiple drops by the Colts wide receivers too, not only for Richardson but for Gardner Minshew as well. I mean, it has to be on the onus on the wide receivers, the pass catchers, to catch the ball as well. He had some good throws though. There was one where he layered it over the middle, one that should have been completed to Mo Alley Cox. And Mo Alley Cox ended up dropping it. He had what would have been a 60-yard touchdown to backup wide receiver Vincent Smith. So you can't really look at these numbers and say, oh, he did poorly, he did well. It's all about the context. You really have to be there to kind of see it. And then once again, this is practice. This isn't a real game. They're not scheming for anything. They're just kind of getting themselves back into football. This is a heavy install period where they're just laying the foundation for this offense and trying to get everybody up to speed. So again, you just want to see him make progress. You want to see him in there, and you don't want it to seem too big for Anthony Richardson. And Shane Steichen is happy with where he's at. All of his veteran teammates have constantly, and I seriously mean constantly, because it seems like every time the veterans are asked about Anthony Richardson, this is brought up is his work ethic, and the kid is just trying to absorb as much information as he possibly can and trying to get better as quickly as possible. And that's really all you can ask out of your rookie quarterback at this stage of the offseason. And I think Anthony Richardson is doing everything he needs to do to be successful in the NFL.
Yeah, and with how limited of experience he has, mixed with the fact that you can just feel the energy in the air with that Gardner Minshew 1 year, $3.5 million contract, I believe it was, that they want this man to start. Okay, so there's a lot of forces here and a lot of factors that are getting put into this. The biggest force that matters the most, though, it's not about the coaching staff the most, because they have done this for years. I mean, yes, Steichen's walking into his first head coaching gig, but he's been an offensive coordinator and a quarterback coach before this. He's been doing this a while, and he's got the experience. Anthony Richardson, if he wasn't doing what he's doing right now. And that is just basically, as I think we've heard, he's pretty much living at the facility, which is awesome. That's what you need with a guy like him that lacks the experience. He needs to soak up as much as possible. So that should make every Colts fan, player, and front office member very excited that such a young dude is up there cracking jokes about he's just there so he doesn't get fined, mixed with the fact that he's also putting in the hard work to become an NFL starter week 1 in his first season.
As true, it says here in all caps, work ethic, and Anthony Richardson certainly has that. And something that Jake revealed to us in his piece, kind of laying out all of his notes from the 2 days of minicamp. I thought this was very interesting. Is the Colts had Alec Pierce go into the game, and on the every single play that Anthony Richardson was taking a snap, Alec Pierce was in there as well. Didn't matter if Anthony Richardson was working with the first team offense or the second team offense, Alec Pierce was in there kind of mirroring him whenever he would go under center. And I think that's important. That's important because the Colts really want Richardson and Pierce to grow up together, to really get chemistry with one another and start building that connection. So I think if Michael Pittman was out there, Josh Downs was out there, you would see a little bit of those same qualities as well. But I think that really shows the bigger picture, Drake, that they expect Anthony Richardson to play early. So getting these reps with guys that he's going to be throwing to on Sundays, like an Alec Pierce, and really trying to get that timing down this early in the process, I think that's huge. And I think it really speaks to not only the confidence that the Colts have in Richardson, but like I said, they really plan for him to be out there pretty early in the season at this point.
Yeah, and it's also really cool to see Alec Pierce making a mental connection, play connection with Richardson, because that's going to be arguably his best deep target. All right, and that's Richardson's greatest strength right now, is that deep ball. So I think that that's just amazing, and that's exactly what you want to see again with such a young quarterback. And they're also putting a lot of faith into Alec Pierce going into his sophomore NFL season.
Right. They need Alec Pierce to step up. He needs to be that number 2 wide receiver. I mean, we saw glimpses of what he could do last year in a shaky quarterback situation. Now it's time. It's time for Pierce to take that second year leap, kind of like what Michael Pittman Jr. did, and really come on and show that he can be an answer at wide receiver for this team. Otherwise, who knows? Maybe the Colts draft a wide receiver early to in fact be the person that can do that and help out Michael Pittman Jr. On the opposite side. But we already talked about how the offense struggled, so that obviously means that the defense did a pretty good job. And where we really saw this was because they're not in full pads, so you can't really judge the pass rushers or the offensive line, but you still can judge the defensive backs. And because of these 7-on-7, 11-on-11, you're still guarding your man. And this is where the rookie cornerbacks really shine throughout OTAs and throughout training camp, or I'm sorry, throughout mandatory mini camp. Specifically, I mean, we talked about how Darius Rush had a pick 6 of Sam Ehlinger. Rush wasn't out there this week for minicamp because of a hamstring issue, but we saw Jalen Jones, the rookie out of Texas A&M, get another interception. Again, of Sam Ehlinger. They just keep picking on poor Sammy boy there, but it is encouraging, especially because of how dire of a situation the Colts are in at the cornerback position right now with everything going on with Isaiah Rodgers Sr. It's good to see these young athletic cornerbacks making plays on the ball, even if it is against Sam Ehlinger. It still has to boost their confidence up.
Yeah, and again with the Isaiah Rodgers situation going on, and even before it, they were already thin at the position. You know, this is something that you've heard the thing of: are they going to bring in a veteran, or are they going to just let these young guns roll? And right now, Darius Rush is making a serious case that he could potentially start, and Jalen Jones, without question, is going to get a bump up in playing time. I'm sure. This was a guy that was supposed to be, again, a 4th or 5th round pick, and he fell to the 7th round. So I think that the Colts are high on all 3 of these guys. Obviously, when Juju Brents is ready to go, he's kind of going to be the guy that's expected to start anyway, but it's really cool to see such a young defensive back group make some really big plays against a veteran quarterback that is going into, I think, his third season.
Yeah, I think so. No,
Fourth?
Sam Ehlinger, fourth. I forget when Sam Ehlinger. This will be his fourth season because
Okay.
he was drafted the same year that I think. Maybe, man. I'm so I feel like Sam Ehlinger's been on the Colts for forever.
An
That
eternity.
that you don't even know. Stats, Matt. This is your portion of the show while we have brain farts. But back on the cornerback situation, another guy I wanted to give a shout out to is Dallas Flowers.
Yes.
Dallas Flowers, do not sleep on Dallas Flowers. This kid is not just a kick returner, and the Colts do not see him as just a kick returner. They are fully expecting Dallas Flowers to compete for one of those outside starting jobs at the cornerback position. And he's been showing out in minicamp, making plays on the ball. I think he had an interception this week as well. I think he picked off Gardner Minshew. So as Wyatt Law says, year 3 for Sam. Thank you. But it's very interesting. Yes, it would be year 3 for Sam because year 4 would have been Jacob Eason. Anyways, I'm getting off track here. But Dallas Flowers, man, I see a lot of people on Twitter just saying like, oh, it's automatically saying it's going to be Juju Brents and Darius Rush as the starters on the outside. And that may be, it may end up being that, maybe either later in the season or maybe even to start the season if Rush and Brents can have really good summers. But Dallas Flowers isn't going away quietly. The Chris Ballard already mentioned that they think Dallas Flowers can take the next step and really compete. Dallas Flowers has been taking snaps with the first team defense since Isaiah Rodgers Sr. hasn't been there with the team, and he's making plays, and that's really all you can ask for. But for people that are just assuming that the Dallas Flowers is going to be a backup cornerback in this team, I wouldn't be so sure about that just yet.
Yeah, and you got to think. I know that right now the name Isaiah Rodgers is a little tender to some, but when it comes to the way that his trajectory went, he started on special teams.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then all of a sudden he finds himself in like a DB4 role, and then all of a sudden he's actually making some he's having some starting snaps like last season. Well, Dallas Flowers was absolutely outstanding as far as returning. And he's a great special teamers with incredible athletic ability and speed. And if he can just get his hips to be able to turn quick enough, I mean, this is a guy who could actually compete for that starting position. He could be a DB3 behind a guy like Kenny Moore II and like Juju Brents. Yeah, don't write that guy off, because I think that right now it's going to be a pretty fierce battle, especially now with Rodgers potentially going to, be gone from the team. You might be looking at a pretty fierce battle between Rush and Dallas Flowers for that third cornerback spot. It's going to be pretty entertaining, I think, actually.
I honestly think outside of Anthony Richardson, that is going to be the biggest storyline and the biggest or the best battle to watch of all of training camp. Is that cornerback spot, just because the Colts, there are so many question marks surrounding that position, and there's so many young guys, so many unproven talents that this is their opportunity to go out there and really lock down that spot. It is wide outside of the nickel cornerback job that's Kenny Moore's, and then when they're in their base, Moore will obviously handle one of those cornerback spots, but the rest of those cornerback spots in those positions absolutely wide open. So it's going to be very fun to watch who performs, who gets those spots going into the season. Do the Colts bring in a veteran? Because that is still a possibility.
Oh yeah,
cornerback is going to be a soap opera all through the end of July, through August, and into September for the Indianapolis Colts. So let's quick run through the injuries or guys who missed mini camp, just to kind of give you all a status update on those. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor did not participate due to ankle surgery, but he did say that he fully expects to be back by the time training camp starts in July. So nothing to worry about there. There was question marks around Zach Moss. Why wasn't Zach Moss at minicamp? Well, him and his wife just had a baby, so congrats to Zach Moss.
Hey.
So he had a very, very good excuse as to why he was missing mini camp. So he'll be back by training camp. Michael Pittman Jr. still out with a hip. He should. I don't know if he. I've heard it's nothing too serious. He should be back by training camp as long as nothing sets him back, but it doesn't seem like the Colts are too worried about it. Alec Pierce was out with a foot, but then returned. Josh Downs still dealing with a knee. Again, kind of the same thing with Pittman. Nothing to worry about, just a little ding in the knee. They're not going to push it right now since it's June. Josh Downs should be back by camp as well. Jelani Woods dealing with the hamstring, same thing. Drew Ogletree, tight end, working his way back from an ACL. So his target is training camp as well. That's where a lot of these guys are targeting, is just to wait and play it safe until training camp. Shaquille Leonard, obviously still out with his back injury. We hope to see him by the time training camp begins. His situation obviously is a little bit more foggy because there's no real timetable on it, and it's just about getting that strength back that Shaq Leonard feels like he needs. Juju Brents with the wrist surgery, but he is still on track for training camp as well. Darius Rush with the hamstring, same thing. And then punter Rigoberto Sanchez still recovering from the Achilles. He feels good though, and the Colts have no worries about him. He should be able to come back and start punting and kicking balls once we get to training camp as well. So for the most part, it does seem like it's a long list, Drake. I'm not going to lie there. But for the most part, it seems like all of these little injuries aren't too serious. There are some, obviously, like Jonathan Taylor's ankle surgery, obviously Shaquille Leonard with his back injury. But for the most part, these are all just little nicks here and there, and the Colts were being overly cautious because, once again, it is only June. The games don't matter until September.
Yeah, and a lot of these are maintenance injuries, man. I mean, they're like maintenance dings and dents in the car kind of thing. Like you just need some time to buff it out. You know what I mean? So, but outside, really, there's a couple there that are from last season, like Drew Ogletree's ACL and Darius Leonard's back and Jonathan Taylor's ankle. So, they're making sure. I mean, those are some. And Ogletree's a guy that they want to see what he can do. So then the other two are stars. You just want to make sure these guys are ready with such a young team and a brand new coach. You don't want to push the gun on health, especially.
Right. And while most of these are just little dings here and there was one injury that unfortunately is going to keep a guy out for the season, which gets us into the latest Colts news and rumors. So the Indianapolis Colts did place rookie safety Daniel Scott, the 5th round pick out of Cal, placed him on injured reserve yesterday due to a torn ACL. It came out that Scott tore his ACL on the final day of OTAs before mini camp began. Really tough break because obviously his rookie season is over before it really even gets a chance to start. And you might think, oh, 5th round safety, who really cares? The Colts kind of were excited about what he could contribute this year. Definitely was going to be a core special teamer. That's what he really excelled at Cal. And the Colts weren't opposed to him getting some snaps on defense as well.
Well, and again, there have been multiple Colts players that have made their starts on special teams, and they've become more prominent down the road. And this is an incredibly athletic safety that Brian Mason does not get to use now. And that's the biggest blow is to the special teams unit. And it's also because he has so much experience. He played 661 snaps of special teams in college. That's incredible. That's a lot of experience in one department of football. So it sucks. It's kind of like Andrew Ogletree's injury, honestly, only sooner. So you just right away, just make sure that his recovery is going well, make sure that his rehabilitation is going well, because unlike a 3 or 4 or 5 year pro, this guy hasn't even been able to do anything yet. So make sure he's good there mentally too. He'll bounce back, hopefully stronger than ever once everything's said and done.
Right. Yeah, it's just a bad break for the kid. So we wish him well and wish him a speedy recovery as well. So in order to replace Daniel Scott, the Colts signed safety Michael Tutsy, who was actually a local tryout during OTAs and during the mini camp period. He impressed enough, and then with Scott unfortunately having his injury, it opened the door for Tutsy to get signed to the roster and see if he can make the final 53 once we get through training camp and the preseason.
Yeah, and he's also he's a former, obviously he's a local that went to Warren Central, and he's a former teammate of Juju Brents. So I think that's pretty cool. So he's got somebody, you know, on the inside, if you will, that knows him personally. So tough break for the Colts, but this is a league that moves so damn fast. So it's already next man up. What are you going to do about this? The Colts acted very swiftly and grabbed a guy that they believe might be able to be a nice depth piece down the road.
Right. Was Warren, like you said, Warren Central grad, grew up in Indianapolis, went to college at North Dakota State and was a star there. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles this and how he really attacks this chance in the NFL, as Wyatt Losses was a two-time All-American at North Dakota State. And I see Patrick Rye and Wyatt Law are on top of our next point here that I didn't put in our notes here, Drake, but wanted to give a shout out to Hot Rod, Rodrigo Blankenship, and Chase McLaughlin. So the two Colts kickers for the 2022 season are now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and will be having a competition between the two to see who will be the kicker for the Buccaneers in 2023. All I have to say, Drake, is I'm really glad that the Colts don't have to worry about the kicking situation anymore with Matt Gay and wondering who their kicker is going to be. And each time that he goes onto the field, if he's going to make that kick.
Yes, and again, that's why I say Matt Gay is totally warranted for his contract that he has, because he is one of the best in the game. And like you said, you're not going to walk out there and go, oh my God, it's from 42 yards out. Are we going to make this head on with no wind? Like, oh gosh, the game's on the line. Is he going to tie the game for us against the Houston Texans in week 1? You don't have to worry about that. So it's going to be interesting actually to see. My money's on Chase McLaughlin just because of how he actually not only replaced Rodrigo Blankenship, but he actually did pretty dang good for a Colts team when he had to go out there and score most of the points.
Yeah, I would say McLaughlin probably has the edge in that battle, but yeah, I think Colts fans are going to enjoy not having to worry so much on fourth down this season. But that's our show for this evening, guys. Really, really appreciate everyone that tuned in tonight to talk about Jonathan Taylor, recap minicamp with us, and all of the other things. Wanted to give a special shout out to those who gave us a super chat tonight. Patrick, my beautiful wife Danielle, Logan, you guys, obviously, we thank you so much for all of your support, and you're what help us be able to bring this show to all the Colts fans that we do. So please, if you haven't done so already, again, go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on Twitter, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you never miss an episode or a time when Drake and I are going live. And if you do have to miss us, subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star review and tell your friends about the Horseshoe Huddle podcast, because we always want to have more Colts fans involved in this show. Drake, as always, the hardest working man in the Colts media, has been writing away, just pushing out fantastic content for horseshoehuddle.com. Drake, what can the people go check out?
So I just released an article on what Anthony Richardson already means to the Colts fan base, how Bernard Ryman made an all-breakout team list, and one that will be getting released is the 5 questions, the 5 most important questions the Colts are going to have to answer heading into training camp.
Definitely be sure to go check those out. I've got a couple pieces up on the site as well. One was about Anthony Richardson and how he is adjusting to life in the NFL. And one of my favorite quotes was when he was asked about how has life been in the NFL. Richardson said, "It's everything I've dreamed of." So definitely go check that out on the Colts rookie quarterback. And then I dove into great detail on Jonathan Taylor and what he said to the media yesterday, what he's looking for in his next contract, what the Colts are thinking, and really where this is all going. So be sure to check both of those pieces out. And guys, Rookie Files begins next week. If you're not familiar with that, every single off season in the summer, Rookie Files is my series where I dive into each and every single one of the rookies, their backstory, how they grew up, any challenges, adversities. Just really like to tell the story about the person of each one of these draft picks. And then we cap it all off with how I think they fit with the Indianapolis Colts moving forward. So we're going to start kicking those off next week to lead us right into training camp. Going to be a lot of fun with 12 draft picks in this class, all of them vastly different stories. So you'll want to be sure to check that out. Go follow Drake on Twitter at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we will be back Monday night to talk more Colts football with everybody. But until then, enjoy your weekend and happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. We'll be seeing you.